Today, we are looking at loops. So we're going to start with this unemployment data.xlsm. There's nothing too special about this data, except it's just some data to work with. We're looking at the three kinds of loops. So far, we've seen two kinds of loops. What kinds of loops have we talked about in class? The do loop we use extensively, and the for next loop. And so we're going to review those two and kind of see. We'll use this as an example to see if the differences. We'll solve the same problem 3 times with those two loops, and then another loop called the for each loop, which is really quite a bit different. All right, so enable editing. What do we have here? 2006 through 2014. Again, this is just data that I downloaded from the Census Bureau. So here we've got all of our counties again. So here's Baldwin County, Alabama. It tells us in 2006 what the civilian labor force was, how many were unemployed, how many were unemployed, and what the unemployment rate was. So ultimately, actually this chart here is what we're going to try to build. So I'd like to be able to make some code that does this, that generates a block of data like this. Now look, if I look at this, this is data for one county. And this is 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10 through 14. So it's data off of all of these sheets, but it's brought in one place so I can make a chart out of it. So that's the idea. I'd like to make that happen automatically so that the user could be right here, say I'm on Baldwin County. I want to build the chart that shows the unemployment trend for all the data we have here. And in fact, if someone brings in a new tab with 2015 or 2016 data, I want it to build that into the chart as well. I don't have to change my code. I want to automatically handle that. So that's where we're headed. You ready to take a look? Let's begin. We're going to begin by creating a function that we will pass it. We'll pass that function 2 things. We'll pass it a year, and we'll pass it a FIPS code. I don't know what FIPS stands for, but each one of these has a different code. We'll pass it a year and a FIPS code, and it will tell us back the unemployment rate for that county in that year. We'll build that function first, and then we'll use that function in a loop to be able to generate these kinds of tables arbitrarily, just based on whichever line the user has selected. All right, let's take a look. So here's my VBA code, delightful. I'm going to close some windows to have a little more choice. So let's view Project Explorer. All right. So the module I'm in is called mod loops. It's the only module in here. There's no code. There's this one directive at the top. So, someone remind me what option explicit does.
Spell check.
It's a spell check for your variables. It forces you to declare your variables before you use them. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and create a function. Function, I'm going to call this get unemployment data.
Can I ask a question about attendance?
Question about attendance, yes.
What if you attend the other section? Does that count, or do you have to attend your section?
Now, if you attend this section or the other section, as long as you're submitting that information on the quote for the day, sometime between when that class starts and when this one ends, you're okay. All right, so get unemployment data. That's too much to type. I'm going to call it get you data. And this function is going to get you data. Get me data, get you data. We're going to pass it. We're going to pass it a year. Here's the problem. We can't make a parameter called year. Why not? Year's a reserved word. I'm going to come to my immediate window and ask for the year of today's date. It'll actually tell us the year from a given date. And so I'm going to call it the year. That's not a reserved word. I'll bring that as a string. Bless you, my son. And I'm also going to pass it in a FIPS code. I'll just call it FIPS as a string. And this is going to return an unemployment number, so as single. All right. So the idea is we're going to give this thing 2006, a particular number. It's going to have to go and find it. So let's go ahead and let's use the year to bind onto a particular sheet. So let me just dim a worksheet, dim a variable. I'll just call it S as a worksheet. Worksheet. Now I will say set S equal to worksheets, and then I'm just going to put the year. Because actually the name of these worksheets are actually named for the years that hold the data. And so that should bind this object variable onto whichever worksheet was identified by the year that was passed in. So far, so good? All right. At this point, we're just going to assume that we're passing in a valid worksheet name. Because if this is going to be, if someone passes in something that's not a worksheet name, this is just going to cause a failure. And at some point, if we're making this code a little more robust, we would want to anticipate that. But for now, let's just assume that we're passing in good data. All right, I'm also going to need to be able to find where that FIPS code is. So let's suppose we're coming to 2006, and we've passed in Baldwin County. We're going to pass in 01003. So we need to be able to find this. We've done an example of doing find before, but it's one that is so powerful that it probably bears repeating again. So let me dim found cell as a range. And then we'll take that same approach that we did before. The idea is we've got this range variable, found cell. We want to bind it on to the results of the find method. We're going to tell it, go to the sheet and find something. And then the key is that if it can't find it, then found cell will be bound onto nothing. Otherwise, it'll be bound onto a range. Okay, so let's see the code for that again. So we've set S equal to the worksheet we want to work on. Now we will set found cell equal to S dot, now the FIPS is only in the first column. No reason to look across the whole sheet, especially because it's possible that a FIPS code could correspond to some actual number over here. Right? So I want to limit this to only look in column A. You see the problem? I don't know if that's the case anywhere, but this could be a valid FIPS code for all I know. This one here, 42,000 is probably a valid FIPS code. So we're going to limit it just to column A where the FIPS codes are. So LUMS, columns number 1, dot cells, dot find. Now, it'd be really nice if that would give me IntelliSense help when I hit that open parenthesis. But the editor is just looking at that and going, this is too complex. I can't tell what you mean by this. If it was simpler, it would figure it out. Find is just a method of a range. So it turns out that since found cell is a range object, I'm going to cheat here. I'm just going to come in here and say found cell dot find, and that it knows. The editor is just not sophisticated enough to figure out that to tell that find is the same as this find. But saying range object dot find, it goes, oh yeah, I totally know it. So we're doing this just to get the syntax here. What am I looking for? I'm looking for the FIPS code. What am I looking after? There's no cell I'm looking after, so I'll skip that one. Look in select formulas or look in values. There's no formulas here. They're all values, so I don't have to specify that one. But this one I do have to specify. What am I looking at? I definitely want to say I want to look at the whole thing. I want a match that matches the whole contents of the cell, and I do that with XLWHOLE. Okay, so that's really what I'm after. And the IntelliSense helped me get there. Now I'll paste it in there and get rid of this line. It was just here to help me get the syntax correct. So now, I'm going to go ahead and run the code to this point. Remember, this is a function. I can't just hit play on this function. For two reasons. One, it returns a value. It's got to know what to do with the value. But two, it's got these two parameters. It's got to have these parameters given to it to be able to know what to do. And so I am going to call that function by saying getViewData. I'm going to pass it a year, 2006. I'm going to pass it a FIPS code, 01003. 01003. Okay. So I'm telling it that I want to print the return value from this function. Now, I've got a breakpoint here, so we'll stop right there. Okay, so at this point, we have not actually run this statement yet. So if I ask for the type name of found cell, right now, found cell is pointing at nothing. Remember, nothing is just a special object that all object variables are pointing to when they first start. So the object sitting in memory somewhere, and nothing is that object variable is referring to that. Now, if the find is successful, this object variable, found cell, is going to be connected up to the cell that it found. If it's not successful, what's it going to be looking at? It'll still be at nothing. I'm going to execute this line. I'm going to check the found cell again. Now it's arranged. Now it's connected up to a range. But if it didn't connect up, then we'd know you typed in something I couldn't find. So I'd like to be able to handle that. So I will do that right here. I will say, there's actually a special way to say if an object variable is referring to nothing. I say if found cell is nothing. The is operator allows me to say if I have two object variables and they're pointing at the same object, I can use is to find out if that's the case. So is will return true if it's two operands are object variables referring to the same object. So if found cell is nothing, then what does it mean if found cell is nothing at this point? I didn't find what I was looking for. I can't very well return the right unemployment rate because I never found the FIPS number you were talking about. Go ahead.
So, when you see FIPS at the top, are you identifying the variable? So when you're the function, so what is happening in that?
Yeah, so let me talk, the question is, you got a lot of words up here. What do they mean? So let's take a look at these. Okay, so function, end function says, hey, we're making a procedure. It's a function procedure, not a sub-procedure. What's the difference between function procedure and sub-procedure? Only one difference. What is it? When a function procedure is done executing, it sends a value back to where it was called from. That's why we can use a function procedure. We can call a function procedure from inside a cell. Right? We can say this cell equals, and I call it this function, because it calculates something and it sends a value back to where it was called from. And so that's the difference. So we're saying, hey, we're going to have a block of code that runs, but when it's done running, send the value back. Now, we're also going to specify the type that it's passing back. So is it going to pass back a string? Is it going to pass back a Boolean? Is it going to pass back a single precision floating point number? That's what we're doing here, because these unemployment rates that I'm after, they're like 4.5% or something. 4.8, 4.2, 5.2%. And so I'm going to be sending back not an integer, but a number with a decimal in it.
So what's the stuff in the front?
Yeah, we're headed there. Okay, so next says, these in here, these are where I've declared what's called a parameter. It's a special kind of variable. I'm declaring a variable here. But the way a parameter variable gets its value is when the function is called. So here's me calling the function. I'm calling the name of the function. I'm trying to print whatever this function returns. Now, I've got two parameters, the year and FIPS. I'm going to give these variables their value right here when I call the function. And so, the function name, open parenthesis, the value that I want to get assigned to the first variable, the value that I want to get assigned to the second variable. So now, if I look, that's what I called it as, if I look at what the value of the year is, it'll tell me that variable right now has 2006 in it, because when I called the function, I supplied the value 2006, it got assigned to this variable, that's what the year equals. If I asked FIPS, it would be that value right there. FIPS is 1000, 01003. Okay?
Sure.
So the whole point here is that I need to, the process here is I've got to find out two things.
So my question, so these 2006 and 0013, where's it pulling that? Did you just tell it that somehow, or is it pulling that information?
So I typed in 2006 right here, so that when I'm calling this function to test it, I'm saying, I want to test this by sending 2000. I want this variable, the year, to equal 2006 during this test. And we need that information so we can figure out which sheet to work on. We're going to use the year to figure out which sheet we're working on. And then we're using the 1003, which is called FIPS, to figure out which row we're going to find on that sheet. And then we're going to offset and go pick up the right value. Okay? All right. So, yeah, so if found cell is, it turns out we found it. But if we didn't find it, we're done. We got to do some way to tell whoever called this we didn't find it. Now this is going to return a floating point number. So I can't return a string. I can't return false. I can't return did not find. It's got to be a number. So here's what I'm going to do. Remember, the way we set the return value of a function is by specifying, by setting the name of the function equal to the value I want it to return. So this is what I'm going to do. If found cell is nothing, if we didn't find the cell we're looking for, then I want to return negative 100. I'm saying this is what's called a sentinel value. We are sending back a value to the column where this was called from, a special number that when you see negative 100, it's going to let you know something's wrong. What would it mean to say I have negative 100% employment? I don't have any idea what that means. It's nonsensical. And so hopefully when someone looks at that, they'll go, negative 100% unemployment. There's a problem. But because this has to return a single, it has to return a number. We don't have another choice. We can make it return a string, and then it can return a number or a message. But I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. Then we're done. There's nothing else we need to do here, so I'll just say exit function. The end if is here. So if and if. Okay, so if found cell is nothing, if we didn't find it, we'll say, all right, we're going to return negative 100 and then get us out of here. So if we make it to here, what does it mean? If we ever get to this part of the code, this line of code right here, it means we found the cell. Because if we didn't find the cell, we would have come in here and exited out. So now, all we have to do is say, all right, now we're ready to return. We know what the cell is. We're on the right sheet. We know what cell we're on. We're just going to say get udata equals found cell. Found cell is going to be in the FIPS column. It's right here. We want to get to that unemployment percent, so we're going to offset by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to get that unemployment number. So found cell dot offset 0 rows, 6 columns, and I want to return the value of that cell. All right. I'm going to stop my code. I'm going to run it again. I'm going to execute this again. Now, nothing's going to stop it. It should just run through. And I expect that this will now find whatever the unemployment percent is for Baldwin County. Let's take a look at it. It was a good idea to check to make sure you're getting the value you expect to get. So here's Baldwin County. I'm expecting to get 3.2 come back from this function. And I'm saying, look at 2006 Baldwin County, and it brings back 3.2. Okay, little function. It just works for this workbook. I mean, it's not a really very generalizable function, but we know that the data is 6 offset from what we're after, and this will be kind of. So it's taken quite a few steps to get this value, but I wanted to get this logic kind of abstracted away from the loops that we'll be working on, so that I can just make this call with just one line. Okay, it's probably a good time for us to pause right here and make sure if you want to follow along with the example that you've got your function working. So we'll pause. All right, there was a question. The question is, what is this for? If we didn't put this line, let's go ahead and I'm going to have this. We're going to execute this with one that it can't find. So that's not a valid FIPS number, and so that's going to return negative 100. So we were saying if you don't find it, return negative 100. But why return negative 100? What would happen if I didn't have this line in here? What if this was gone? What would it return? First of all, would it return a value? It's a function. It is going to return a value. Period. It will return a value. As soon as I say function here, this thing's going to return a value. Now, if I don't tell it what to return, in fact, if we look at the path here, if we didn't have this line and we get to the end function, there was never a line that said what get you data should return. I've never told it what to return. What would it return? It would return the default value for the type that's specified. What's the default value for a single? 0. All numeric data types default to 0. And so if it didn't find it, it would return 0. Why not just leave it at 0?
Be a real answer.
Yeah, I wouldn't know if there really was. I couldn't tell the difference between couldn't find what you told me to find and there's no unemployment. Now, I don't think there is ever really zero unemployment. That would be weird, but possible, I guess. In this data, there's no zero unemployment. But yeah, we're saying don't return 0 because 0 could be real. Yeah, the question is, does it have to be a numeric expression? And the answer is yes, because it's returning single. Now, if I made this variant instead of single, it could return a number or it could return a string. So we could say not found or something if this was variant. I'm gonna leave it as single.
Why are you leaving it as single?
Question is, why am I leaving it as single? I already typed it. If you really wanted to, we can do it. Variant. Not found. Now it'll return not found when it's not found. When it does find, it'll return 3.2. You like this one better? I guess it's okay. I just hate variants altogether. I just used up 22 bytes of RAM for this. Was it worth 20? Maybe it was worth 20. Okay. I'll leave it that way. That's okay. All right. So now we're going to get to what I really wanted to focus on today, which is loops. So here's the idea. I want to be able to have the user say, all right, I'm on this row right here. Bibb County, Alabama. Run this procedure. Might be a hotkey or put a button in the ribbon to run it. And I want to have it look across every single sheet and pull in the unemployment data for Bibb County, Alabama, and build a little table like this. Unemployment rate, all the years, all the rates, so that I can build a chart off of it. That's what I want to do. Now, I think what I'd like to do is I want to have like a sheet that's just meant for collecting these charts that I'm going to build. So I'm going to add a new sheet. And I'm going to put it in the very first position. We can leave it anywhere. I'm going to put it in the first position. And I'm going to call this charts. So when the user runs this, they're going to be somewhere that they're on a county. It's going to build that table of data, but it's going to build it over here on my charts sheet. We'll build the table of data here. Then if we get to it, we'll have it generate the chart as well. And it's like gravy. If we get to making the chart, that's great. It's not really what I'm focusing on. It'll be a little more satisfying to actually have it generate the chart for. Okay, so that's where we're headed. So this we're going to create as a sub procedure. Sub, I'm just going to call it build chart. Build data table. That way, if we don't get to actually making the chart, I won't feel so bad. All right. So I'm going to begin by setting up a sheet that's going to be my destination sheet. I'm going to make like a source sheet and a destination sheet. I'll declare two variables for that. Dim src as a worksheet and dim dest, est as a worksheet. Worksheet. All right, now my destination sheet, that's going to be easy. Destination sheet is just going to be a sheet called charts. I just created it, so I'll set that one up straight away. Set dest equal to worksheets, or just sheets, either one will do it, charts. So I'm getting my destination set up to begin with. Now, I also have to figure out where am I going to build this data. I don't want to be writing over the top of it each time. So we'll do the same trick that we've done before to find out where the last data is in column A, and we'll move down like 3 cells. So I'll declare another variable. This one I'll call row as along. And I will set, let's see, rows along. I don't have to say set because it's not an object variable. I only use set to bind an object variable onto an object. I just want to give row, a numeric variable, a value. I'll just say row equals destination sheet, looking at all of my destination sheet dot cells. I want to go to the very last row. How do I say the very last row? Rows dot count, column number 1. From there, I want to do an end XL up. And then from there, I want to ask for the row. So that will tell me the last row that has data on it, and I need a little working space in here, so I'll add 3 on it. So this is the row I'm going to write to. It's going to be whatever we found with some space between it, and then we're ready to write the next. We're okay with this so far? This little trick we've done a few times in class. The key here is that I can ask, normally I give it a row and a column number, but I can ask which row I want to give it. Rows.count tells me how many rows there are. Okay, now we're ready to figure out what our source, what row we're pulling the data from. And, we'll just read that off the active cell. So I think we're ready to write the first one out there. So let's go ahead and do it. Somehow I've got to get my source sheet bound onto a particular sheet. So we'll do this with the loop. Let's go ahead and build the loop now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the same process 3 times. Once with each of the 3 different loops that we're going to work with today. Do loop we work with already. And for that one, I'll need some control variable to keep track of which sheet I'm working on. So let me just, oh no, I've already got it. That's my source worksheet. I've already created. Oh no, I need a number. So dim, I'll call it SN, sheet number, as a byte. All right, so now we'll set up the loop. I'm going to start SN at a particular location, start at 1. It'll do a do loop, starts with keyword do, ends with keyword loop. What's a good thing to always put right here? Do events. Just in case I accidentally put myself into an endless loop, that'll let me out. It'll watch for me to hit escape or control break or click on the pause button here. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to do this until SN is greater than the number of worksheets I've got. Do until UNTIL. So worksheets.count. Worksheets is a collection. So I can ask count of it. It tells me there are 10 worksheets. And so as long as SN is less than, we're going to do it until SN is greater than the count of worksheets. This loop will continue to execute. I better give myself some way to control that. And so I will say SN equals what it used to be plus 1. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start off now by binding my source, my worksheet object, onto whichever sheet we're currently looking at. So first time through, SN is going to be what? It's going to be 1. And so I want to refer to worksheets number 1. So I can refer to that. I can use that number to figure out which worksheet I'm talking about just by specifying that here. So what I want to do is I want to bind on. I've got a sheet variable meant to keep track of which worksheet I'm working on. I'm going to, right here, I'm going to set my source worksheet equal to worksheets, whatever SN currently is. Debug.print SN.name. So we've got 2 different worksheet variables that we set up. Object variables. Remember, object variable is just a location in memory that holds a reference to some other object. It's like giving myself a nickname for the object that I'm working with. So I'm going to step through this code so we can see it happen. Put a breakpoint here. Then I will execute this procedure. That should be source.name. SRC.name. Okay. So right now, dest is not attached onto anything, but if I execute that line, F8, now dest is bound onto my charts sheet. So I can say, what is dest.name? Which charts? Dest is bound onto the chart sheet. Getting this line right here, understanding this line right here, is critical for the rest of the examples today. If you're looking at this going, that's witchcraft, I don't get it, now's the time to say it. Let me talk you through it.
You're talking through.
Okay. So let me do this. Let me come over here to our chart sheet, and let's suppose that I'm going to mark this here as, we're going to imagine that we've got this set up here as memory. So this is a representation of what's happening inside memory. Okay, so let's say that sitting right here at this location in memory, change this to different colors, we can kind of see it. Let's just say that this is a particular range, or this is a particular worksheet. This is the sheet named 2006. And let's say we've got a few of these sitting in memory here. There's one over here, there's one over here, and maybe there's one up here. So this is 2006. Let's make this one sheet number sheet named 2007. This one is a sheet named 2008. And this is the sheet named charts. Okay, so if I have an object in Excel, it's sitting in memory somewhere. And so these are I'm just showing you, these objects are somewhere there in memory. I've drawn them this way because they're kind of complex objects. It has a name. This is 2007. It has like a tab color, different properties. Gray, I don't know what it actually is, XL gray or something. I'm not sure what the default tab color is. But each of these then have different values for this. So what we're doing here is saying, all right, I've got a source sheet. It's an object variable called source. An object variable then only has enough memory to hold an address to another object sitting somewhere in memory. Okay, so here's what happens. As soon as I say set, when I say set source equal to sheet 2006, or set source equal to, let's do this. Let me bring dest in here as well. So here we've got dest. Let's just look at this line right here. So when we say set dest equal to this, a particular one of these worksheets, out of all the sheets that I've got represented in memory here, which one are we talking about on this line right here? Yeah, I'm talking about this one right here. So when I say set dest equal to sheet charts, this is what happens. I am going to insert shape. This object variable refers to this sheet. It's a great color for this arrow. Hold on a second. Let's make it a little bigger, and let's make it a little better. Okay. So this line here, set dest equal to worksheet charts, connects up my dest variable to this worksheet object. So now if I say print dest.name, what's it going to print? Charts. That's the name of the sheet. Okay. So that's what's happening here. We're set up so you have source. Talk about one of these. So let's go ahead and get there. Okay, so now we're going to assign row to figure out where we want to write our data out on our destination sheet. I'll execute that line, and row now has a value of 4. So we're going to write out to row number 4 on our destination sheet. We're setting this variable to 1, no problem. Do until this is larger than the count. Right now the count is 10, this is 1. Is this condition true or false?
It's false.
It's false. And when this is true, I get out of the loop. So it's false, so we're going to step into the loop. Here's the magical part. So now, just like we set dest equal to something, we're going to set source equal to something. Which one are we setting it equal to? Here we set out of all the worksheets the one named chart. Now we're saying out of all the worksheets, the one, what?
First
The number of
Yeah, worksheet number 1, which happens to be whichever one is right here. That's charts. If you move them, then it'll be a different order. Whichever one is first.
so it changes with
If I move this one, it'll bind onto 2006 the first time through. If I put it back here, it'll bind onto charts the first time through. It really is the order, the ordinal position, the way their tabs show in the workbook.
that's like their address.
It's just their sequence in which they fall into the sheets collection. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to print this. I should be able to print the name of that sheet because this refers to a bigger worksheet. There's the name, charts. And as soon as I bind source onto that, which I'll do right now, execute that line, I should be able to ask what src dot name is. It's also charts. So what's just happened is this. We now have 2 different object variables pointing at the same location in memory, at the same object. So far, so good? So now, if I print this, well, I just printed source.name, so I'll print this. It should print charts again. There it is. Now we're going to move our sheet number up by 1. Do events, keep printing it out. So now sheet number is 2. Are we going to get out of the loop? No, because this is still true. Sheet number is this is still false. Sheet number is less than, not greater than. So this will be false. So as I continue to step with F8, I'm coming back and staying in the loop. Now, here's the magical part. Source is now going to get bound onto a different worksheet. Worksheet number 2. What is worksheet number 2? It's 2006. So when I execute this line, I'll go ahead and execute it. And now let's just see what happens. What happens is I just set that variable to look at that sheet. It used to be bound onto this one, and now we're going to bind it onto this one. Okay? And so now as we work through this, step through this line at a time, printed 2006, prints 2007, 2008. It's just, each time we go through, it's going to get bound onto the next one. Go through it once, bound onto the next one, and go through. Okay? But it's being driven by this variable right here. We are using that to figure out which worksheet to bind on the source objects to. We can skip this part. We can, instead of putting source here, we can just use worksheet SN every place we have source. That would work too. That's a common way to do it as well. I want you to get comfortable working with object variables. We got through it in. All right. So now we've got this loop going across all the sheets. It's now time to actually build that table that we're trying to build. So the problem is going to be that if I try to pull data off this chart sheet, is it going to find any data? Is it going to find a FIPS number? It's going to find it. It's not going to find it. And so we don't leave that right here. So right in here, we only want to do this if the name of the sheet is numeric. Well, we got a function is numeric. So if is numeric source.name, then we're going to do something. Otherwise, we're not. So we're only going to do this stuff inside this if block if we're dealing with a numeric name sheet. Do we see how this works? We've hooked up whatever sheet we're currently looking on to the source. If that's a number, we want to do what we're trying to do. All right. Well, all we want to do is we want to write the value. If we think about the table that we're trying to build, we want to start off right up here by putting unemployment. In fact, I probably want to put unemployment rate for a particular county. So whatever row we're working on in column 2, I'm going to put unemployment rate. So I'll do that right here. Look at my destination sheet, dot cells, which PEST. which row do I want? Row, we already figured out what row we're going to write to. Column number 2, I want the value there to be set to unemployment 4. Unemployment 4. And now I want to put the name of the county. The name of the county. Yeah, so it's not the number, I need the name of the county here. Okay. Unemployment 4. Now here's the idea. The idea is that the way that we're going to signal that this is the one we want to work on is we're sitting somewhere on this row. So my active cell is on my active sheet. My active cell is right here. And so I'm going to read that by saying active sheet. I don't have to say active sheet. If I don't specify a sheet, it'll assume the active sheet. Cells. Let's skip by the row for a minute. Which column has the county name? Third column, or column C. And I want the value of it. So if I could just figure out how to get to the right row, I can pull that county name up. How do I do it? Well, the way the user is going to communicate to me the row they want to build the chart for is by selecting any cell on that row. So I can just ask for the active cell dot row. If the active cell is on row number 6, active cell dot row is 6. So I'll be building unemployment 4, and then whichever my active cell's row is, column C, which is where the name of the county is. So right now I'm on Baldwin County, 2010, it doesn't matter 2010, but I'm on the sheet that says Baldwin County here. I'll be on column D. Let me just step through this. And that should have put, over here on my chart sheet, unemployment for Baldwin County, Alabama. Now I'm ready to write the rest of this data down here, but I see I put this in a place I didn't mean to put it. Where I wrote this now, it's going to be happening for each loop that we go through. Right? I've got this inside the loop. I actually want this to be right out here. As soon as I tell the row, as soon as I figure out what row I'm on, I want to go ahead and write this value out. Now I've got a destination, I've got a row, I'm ready to write this out. Go ahead.
If you don't write dest in this line, would that work as well? Without the dest dot?
Okay, so what would happen if we didn't have destination here? So when I said cells, row, which worksheet would we be on? On the active sheet. And so this is telling me, no, we're going to write this out to our charts sheet. That's why we bound the dest variable onto that sheet. So my mistake, I got a little bit behind myself, putting it down here in the loop. That belongs outside the loop. I'm only writing that once. Now inside the loop, I'm going to actually write the data for each one of these. Question?
If I'm understanding it correctly, isn't the whole reason to set it as dest just so that you don't have to type out worksheets, parentheses, quote, charts every time you want to reference that?
Yeah, so the question is the whole reason that we did this line here is so I could say dest instead of worksheets chart right here. And the answer is that is most of the reason. The other reason is for you to have a little experience binding on an object variable onto an object. Because that's going to be really critical for understanding how this whole process works. But yeah, we could put worksheets chart everywhere we have dest, get rid of this line, and it would still work. Okay, so now at this point I've got my value, I've got the title here, so now I'm ready to write in here 2006 and whatever the unemployment is for Baldwin County. So I've already written to my row, figured out row is going to be 4. Now I want row to go up by 1 from right to the next. I want to write the data here. So inside my loop, I'm just going to say, let's see if we found a numeric sheet. Row equals row plus 1. And now we're ready to write out, again to our destination location. Column 1, I want that value to be, what? Help me out here. I want to put 2006 right here. I've just incremented row, and so it's going to be 5. My row is right. How do I get 2006 to go here? Sheets 2 would do it. src.name, right? So if I'm actually looking at that's the whole point, is that my source worksheet is bound on to sheets 2 or to sheets 3 or to sheets 4. So now I can just say src.name. And then column 2, same row, I want to equal what? Well, that's why I wrote this function that we can call getUData. I'm going to pass it a year and a FIPS. getUData. I'm going to pass it source.name, that's my 2006. And now I'm going to pass it whatever's in column 1 of my active sheet on whichever row I'm on. So the same line that I used to get the name of the county, I'm just going to pull that from column A. I'm passing getUData, I'm calling getUData, I'm sending it a year, 2006, and then I'm passing it whatever is in column 1 of the active sheet on the row with the active cell. And that's what getUData does. It returns the unemployment number. Okay, I'm going to stop this code. I'm going to step through it again. Breakpoint on here. The comma right here has a comma. Because I'm sending the value, I'm sending 2 values to the parameters that getUData is expecting. getUData expects to have a year and a FIPS. So I'm passing it a year and a FIPS. Almost fits. Okay, I'm just going to step through this. We're running this, we're setting up, we're figuring out what row is going to be. Let's see, row, probably still be 4. I don't think I ever wrote anything there, so row is 4. We're now going to write our, so we look at this value right here. This should be the name of the county. If I'm on a sheet, it's on the wrong sheet. Got to be over here on 2006. Let me go ahead and put myself on Baldwin County. All right, so that's going to equal Baldwin County. So we're going to write to our destination sheet on the row we're working at in column 2, unemployment for Baldwin County. Execute that line. It's there, but it was there before, so it's not much to look at. It was already there. All right. Now we're setting SN equal to 1. We're going to do until SN is larger than the number of sheets we have. It's not, so we step in. We're going to bind on to our first worksheet, which is named what? This one's named charts. We'll print charts up there. Now we're going to say, hey, we're going to drop in here if this is numeric. Is charts numeric? No. It's not noticing. No, that's not like it doesn't equal 22 or something. And so if we should skip the if statement. We're not going to do, we only want to do that stuff if we've got a numeric chart number, chart name. So we'll add 1, come to the do events, loop back up to the top. And now we're binding onto the next sheet. SN is now 2. We're going to bind on to the sheet named 2006. Print 2006. Is it numeric? Yes. Increment row. Onto our destination sheet, we're going to put the name of the sheet, so 2006, should go into column 1. Look over here on charts. There it is. 2006 is there. And then getUData should bring in the correct. Number. There it brought in 3.2% unemployment. We'll loop through this again. with the next one. By the way, if I hit F8 now, it's actually going to step into get new data. I can just run that whole thing by hitting Shift F8, step over. That will just do that whole line without stepping through my other procedure. And that should have put in my next data. Ooh, not found. Why not found? Not found because I'm depending this on the active row. So I'm assuming that this, we haven't changed what sheet we're looking at. So go back to 2006, run that line again. Back and peek at charts, 3.1 is there. I'll just go ahead now and run it the rest of the way. I'll go ahead and step. Run the next one, next one, next one. What the heck, run the rest of it. Done. And look at charts. It has now built that table that we're after for the chart. Okay? So this is what it takes to do that process with a do loop. How are we feeling about what we've got here? Here's what I would expect. At this point, I'm hoping you're saying, I follow every little piece of what you're doing. No way I could have done this by myself yet. Okay? Now, you might say, you know, I'm following every little piece here, I think, but how this really all fits together is still a mystery to me. Are you in that situation? Okay. We're going to go through a couple more loops. Hopefully it'll help, and if not, then come spend some time with me or spend some time with some TAs. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to rebuild this same thing, but this time we're going to use a different kind of loop. So now I'm going to use a for loop. For next loop. For, we need a control variable. The do loop doesn't really, we can use the do loop, we can control a do loop in any number of ways. Here we're using a number to do it. The for loop is hardwired to use a number to control it. For Sn equals 1, 2, worksheets count. Worksheets.count. So I don't have to initialize it. It's going to be a little bit, this loop will be shorter. I don't have to initialize it. That happens here. And I don't have to increment it, because at the end of my loop, I just say next. If I want to, I can say next Sn. I don't have to say the Sn, and we'll figure that out. But this is the one that's going to increment. Now here I'm adding 1. It'd be pretty easy to add 2 here. How do I make this one add 2? Right over here, I can say step and put a number here. That's how much gets added. STEP. That's how much gets added each time we get to next. What comes after step? If I want it to be 1, I can leave it as 1. If I don't specify this clause, it's going to add 1. That's the default value. So you can leave it off if it's just 1. I'll go ahead and put it in. So the rest of this is going to be the same. And I will go ahead and put the do events in here as well. This loop now does exactly the same thing. The thing here is that the for loop is hardwired. It must have a numeric data type variable that we use to control. It will automatically add something to it when it gets to the end. So 2 things have been reduced. 1, I don't have to initialize the value. And 2, I don't have to increment. The loop does it by itself. I haven't reduced it by that much. But when I know I've got a loop that's going to iterate across a specified range, it's the right loop to use because it kind of jumps up and down and says, this is going to iterate a specified number of times. I'm going to comment out this other loop. We'll leave it here because I might still be here. But so by the way, if you want to comment out a whole block at a time, if you choose View Toolbars, there's an editing toolbar that you can turn on. When the editing toolbar is on, that's what I have docked right here. This button right here will comment out a whole block. Whatever you have highlighted, it'll just put a quote in front of each line. There is no block comment syntax. Most languages say, you know what, I want to start here and ignore everything to here. You can actually have a start block, start comment block, and comment block. There's no such syntax in VBA. You got to put a single quote on every line you want it to say. That toolbar is View Toolbars Edit. The Edit toolbar. All right, so this loop should behave exactly the same. I'm going to go ahead and choose a different one. We were on Baldwin County. I'm going to go to Barber County. I'll run my code. I'll get rid of that breakpoint. Think. Run the code. Then come look at my charts. Now I've got Barber County. I've got different numbers. It has brought in the numbers for Barber County. Questions on this loop? Okay. Both the do loop and the for loop we've seen before in class. The next one is going to be a brand new one for us. Go ahead. Question.
So the for loop, is it just trying to give you like a quicker version of doing the whole Sn equals Sn plus 1? It's just simplifying that.
So the question is, so what have we really gained with the for loop? Is it really just a matter of saying, I want to have the loop handle the incrementing and the initialization? That's exactly right. There is nothing that we could... If the do loop was the only loop in VBA, we'd be just fine. Anything we can do with the other loops, we can do with the do loop. It's just that the other loops are more specifically tuned to a particular kind of problem. And the folks who wrote the language said, you know what, it is so common that we have to do this, take an integer variable, increment it by 1, go across a specified range. That is so common that we want a loop that just does that. And that's what the for next loop does. If you never knew the for next loop, you could write code great. You have a hard time reading someone else's code because it's a really common loop to use. But you could write code just fine. Question? What's my personal preference? My personal preference is when I'm iterating, when I have to take an integer variable across a specified range, use the for loop. That's what I use. And it's not because it saves 2 lines of code. It's because when I look at it, I immediately know, okay, this loop is controlled by an integer variable going across a specified range. And I understand the code better then. All right. Next kind of loop. It's called the for each loop. What the for each loop does is it automates this part of the loop that we have here. It requires a control variable, but this control variable is an object variable. For each source in some collection, worksheets. We end with the keyword next. For each source in worksheet. Now, I'm just going to take the guts of this loop and put it here. We no longer have to bind source onto the specified worksheet because that's what this loop does inherently. The first time through this loop, the for each loop will bind this control variable onto the first element of this set. So if I look over here, the first time through this loop, my source worksheet variable will be bound onto this sheet, the sheet named charts. So as we go through this, if source.name is numeric, great, we're going to do it. Now, of course, this time it won't be because it's sheets, and so we'll skip by this. We'll come back to the top of the loop for the second time through, and my source variable, or my source variable will get bound onto the next sheet in the collection, whatever collection is specified here. And now it'll go through and source will already be bound onto sheet 2. I don't have to do this line. It's implicit with the loop. The folks who made the language said, there's another thing we do all the time. We got a collection of objects. We've got to do something to every single item in that collection, and we're tired of writing a for next loop and putting this line at the top of it. So we built a loop that does that automatically. That's the only thing the for each loop does. It says, I want to iterate across the elements of a set. And just like the for next loop, built in some of the technique that we had to write ourselves for this one, the for each loop does the same thing here. It says, you know what? You could write it with the for next loop using this, or we'll do that for you if you use the for each. We're okay? This is a difficult loop to understand. I used this loop for years before I really understood what it was doing. How did I use it? found some example, copied it offline, plugged it in, it worked, and went great. Let's move on. I never really understood what it was doing. But this is what it does. Each time it gets to the top of the loop, it says, great, bind on to the next element. Bind on to the next element. And it will go through all of them when it's done with the loop. All right, let me comment out this one, and we'll make sure that it's still working.
Professor,
Yeah.
could you help us understand elements a little bit more? Bind on to the next element. Is it always a worksheet? Is it always a...
Okay, let me get this going, and then we'll take that question. So let me get on to a different one. Let me come to Bibb County, Alabama. I will run this procedure, check charts, and now we've got Bibb County, and it's still done exactly the same process here. So the key to understand here is that, and this is a little bit different from the example we had up here because it's binding onto a specific one. This is saying a number, I want to bind source onto a particular element in this collection, worksheets. This is all the worksheets in the workbook. In this case, we're saying we want to bind on this object variable one at a time to each element in this collection. It could be a range. It could be the collection of all workbooks. It could be the collection of all shapes on a worksheet. It could be the collection of the cells in the selection. Let's just take a quick look at that. It might be helpful to kind of see that in a different context. Let me make another sub procedure here. Sub for each cell. Dim R, this time as a range object instead of as a worksheet object. Dim R, thank you. For each R in selection. So let me what I mean by selection. Let's suppose this is what I have selected right here. This is a collection of cells. So that's what's selected. So now when I say for each R in selection, it's going to say, hey, there's a bunch of cells in that selection. We're going to run through this loop once for every cell in that collection, and we're going to bind this object variable onto those individually. Next, debug.print r.address, r.value. So R is an object variable that will refer to this cell the first time that loop iterates, the first time that loop executes. So it should print the address A29 followed by 2006. Then it should print B29 followed by 4.2. Because this control variable will get bound onto each element of this set for each separate iteration. Let's step through it. All right, clear this out. So it's printing. So right now, R is bound onto the first cell, A29, 2006. Now B29, 4.2. Now it'll go now back to A, which should be A30. A31, B31.
Why does it decide to go across rather than down?
Why go across instead of down? And the answer is, when they wrote the way this thing iterated across the sets, they had to pick one. And they went across instead of down. I would prefer to go down instead of across. That's the way I would normally wish it would go. But the whole idea here is, what we're saying is that you've got a bunch of things in this collection, whatever it is. A bunch of sheets, a bunch of cells, a bunch of workbooks, a bunch of shapes, whatever. We want to do something to all of them. Generally what we're saying is, the order in which we do this isn't so critical. We just got to do it to all of them. Now, you can rely on the order, you can rely on it going across and then down across, down across, down across, like that. But the general feeling is, this is the loop to use when you say, I got to do them all, I don't care the order. Yep.
So if the order does matter, you need to use different kind of loop.
If the order does matter, or specifically if you say, no, I got to go down, and then with the next column and go down, then you'll need a more complex loop, maybe even a nested loop. A couple of nested for loops will let you do that pretty efficiently, but it's a lot more code to write. Questions? Yep.
So I understand how it decides how the cells in the range for this, because that's what you selected. But how do you know how many shapes to select?
So again, you might say, again, there's a shapes collection. Just like there's a sheets collection, I can say, iterate across all the shapes here. And then we can do the same thing that we did up here. Say, you know what, we don't want to do all the shapes, we want to do some of those shapes, Well, you could have some logic in here that looks to see something specific about the shape you're looking at and then decide to execute on it or not. Scroll down. Like this.
So would the group have a name that you are referring to? Or
What's that?
would the group have a name?
The sheets, you mean?
Not like the shapes, like the
Yeah, it's just called ActiveSheet.shapes. There are a lot of different collections. In fact, we can define our own collections. And put specific objects in them. We're not going to get into that today because we're out of time. Last thing, folks, just so we can kind of see where this example is going. The next thing would be to say, you know what, I want to put code in here that will generate this chart. We could just record ourselves doing it, insert, scatter chart, with smooth lines, and then it would generate that chart for us. And that's the matter, just recording that code, integrating it would be pretty easy. That's where we're headed. That's the example of the loops. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.